Why did that teacher get fired from your school? Embezzled something like $20,000 from the school field trips she was in charge of scheduling for the whole school. All field trips that needed to be paid for she planned and took the money for. Overcharged the students but only deposited the amount for what the trip cost and kept the rest. Did it for decades and stole about $20,000 over time. Not only fired but charged and found guilty. Not sure how much time she was given. Compared to all the other answers on this thread, some good old-fashioned financial crime seems positively wholesome. During the priest-child abuse scandal of the 2000s, the pastor of my parish was fired for embezzlement. He had a discretionary fund that he was taking huge liberties with. I remember being so relieved it was just about stealing money instead of the innocence of children. Oddly enough, last year I delivered DoorDash to Tom at a Catholic nursing home. Clean, respectable, but not at all luxurious. I came to his room and realized who he was. He seemed very humble, in a wheelchair, and thanked me kindly, even gave me a good, but not high-rolling tip. Whatever he stole, he doesn't have it now, and maybe the whole thing made him a better person, who knows. Because he set up a camera in the middle school theater changing room, girls' side. His dumbass was on the beginning of the video, turning the camera on and adjusting a modified shoebox he put over it to hide it. A student found it and took it home, watched it with parents. Goodbye, Mr. Google. First in the comments section we had a failed art teacher from Germany, now we've got a Mr. Google. There's a pattern here I'm not too sure I like. We had a German teacher named Mr. Gearing. He had a vein on his forehead that would visibly pulse when he was angry, and he was quite easy to make angry. So of course our asshole teenage selves would provoke him as often as possible. We were truly unfair to him, poor guy. It was only much later in life that I wondered if he or his family might have changed their name from Goering. He was the gym teacher for over 30 years. He volunteered to stand near the trash cans during lunch every day to ensure the students dumped their food and gave their finished trays to the cafeteria workers in an organized way. He had done this for decades. Even when my father attended the junior high. One day, a student decided to toss her entire tray in the trash instead of dumping the contents and giving it to the cafeteria work. He removed the tray from the trash and gave it back to her. She threw a carton of chocolate milk at his face, close range. He responded by punching her in the eye. I was expecting the twist to be that he was eating any leftover lunches that were thrown away for 30+ years LOL. History teacher never really taught history. Sometimes he'd just yell at the kids in class. It got worse when his son died in Desert Storm. Then he spent half the class time crying. Assistant principal had to take over one too many days. Eventually he stopped coming to school and we never saw him again. Damn. Sounds like the man was really struggling and needed help. The most awesome teacher I ever had was a history teacher but totally awkward. He was sadly a drunk but a funny one, and a great storyteller. The type that would wave a broomstick pretending he was in battle. One of his weird habits during all this awesome stories, is he would be eating the chalk. Just casually nibble from it out of his fist as if it were peanuts. There were situations, and I don't make this up, that he wanted to write something on the blackboard only to realize he ate all the chalk. Haha. He wanted to date a teacher, and she turned him down. So, then he suspected that she was sleeping with a student. He then hired a private investigator and had her followed. She found out about it, went to the cops, requested a restraining order, and he was brought up on stalking charges. It was discovered that she was sleeping with a student. Edit, he was fired. I don't recall her facing any sort of discipline. It was the 17-year-old, star basketball player. It all started because he was bragging. The rumors of her dating a student started well before the teacher started pursuing her. The rejected teacher hired a private investigator because he heard the rumor mill. Most people in the school thought the two teachers were dating because the male teacher was always in her classroom, even during class hours. He would buy her flowers often. She was the cheerleader's coach, and he was always sitting in on her practices after school. The male teacher abruptly stopped going to her class and going around her. The private investigator and stalking accusations came 2 months after that. Everyone figured he had her followed investigated after he was rejected. My dad subbed, teacher, for a while after he retired. He got personally escorted out of a school once for doing black magic for 5th graders. He did a card trick. And he was in the process of cutting a sheet of paper in a way that makes it possible to walk through it. He is currently banned for life from Deer Park Public Schools in WA. Side note, when I went to visit once we went to a bar. The bartender said, "Holy shit, it's, insert full name, dude. I named my bong after you, Mr. Name." I guess he really influenced the youth. That dude is a legend in the most obscure ways. He also semi-famously screwed up some dress code rules in our home city because he insisted that he be able to wear untucked Hawaiian shirts every day. I should also clarify that he has awards for educational development. Also went to Woodstock Lowell. All his classes were failing. He spoke unintelligible, didn't explain anything well, and if anyone asked a question, he'd respond with them, "Ask someone else who does know." As if we ever wanted to ask him anything unless the entire class didn't understand. This was my old chemistry teacher. He was fired halfway through the year. We then didn't have any chemistry classes for a while. The other chemistry teacher couldn't take over all the vacant hours, but she gave us a 3-week crash course at the end of the year. I learned more in those 3 weeks than I did in the first 6 months with the fired guy. Reminds me of my history teacher in 1 year of middle school. Spoke an almost unintelligible mix of Italian and her dialect, didn't know a damn thing about history, passed the lessons talking about completely unrelated topics and then have us take the tests with the books open, so she was sure grades weren't a problem. She was actually really kind but completely unfit for being a teacher, and she transferred after the end of the year. Not my school, but the school he went to after mine. He was hired as a soccer coach, I believe, and somehow ended up coaching cheerleaders. He ended up having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old student. The girl wrote about it in her diary, her mom read it, called the cops, and they had the girl invite him over for sex. He knocked on the door and they jumped out and arrested him. This was 20-ish years ago. I think he is out now. I know exactly who you are talking about. The incident happened at Longmont Christian School and he was a creep at CCS. My sister didn't want to be around him alone. My history teacher's son had an illness. I'm not sure what, but it was terminal. He needed more time off to be with him and his family. Apparently he had used his allotted vacation/sick time up already and the school board wouldn't approve anymore. So he just left. Can no longer be employed in the district because of it, I heard. Everybody loved him too. One of the few teachers who really cared about his job and his students. The lady they brought in to replace him did nothing wrong, but nobody could truly replace him. The whole class dropped about 5 points in grade because of it. I missed him a lot because he was one of the few teachers I ever tried to really impress. That's brutal. School bureaucrats can be horrible. My friend/her son was hit and killed by a delivery driver. At first, spent all day crying or not saying anything, then went on leave. Came back and would have crying spells or just talk about her son and wouldn't teach at all. She pretty much went into a psychosis and never came back one day and was never the same again. I've seen her once outside of school years later and I don't think she will ever recover. I feel bad for her and often wonder if she ever got better. That is very sad. I do not know how people cope with losing a child.
Hello, this is Matthew's mother and legal guardian. You will desist in contacting my son and having any more irrational and upsetting arguments. That is a form of cyberbullying. You will be blocked and reported to Instagram. This is your only warning. The next call I make will be to the Cybercrimes Division.